Petra is really an expert, you know, in information management. She has 25 years of background and experience in this field, has been for sure has had a lot of experience in capturing data and storing data and documents. So I'm totally excited and really very much look forward to hear your presentation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Annemarie, for the very kind introduction. And I'm thrilled to be here today, especially in person. Having the opportunity to meet with you all is just fantastic. And as I was preparing for this presentation, I was thinking back to what started this, Annemarie. I think it was an article or a blog post that you wrote, and I think it was actually back in February, probably. And it was related to the customer experience and the fact, I think you were writing about the fact that you were shocked to see that so many companies are still struggling with the customer experience. And that was, as I think you put it, in most cases due to the fact that they didn't have a proper or really a concise information management strategy.
I think I spoke about the document strategy.
Indeed.
And you responded to my CIO letter. I'm having my CIO letters, and I'm sometimes writing about certain topics that I see are a challenge or a need, you know, and then I talk about it, and you kindly responded and said, well, you know, I can bring in some experience. Can I come and speak about it? So it's great, you know, that you're here now.
I think my initial reaction was I couldn't agree more. Because what amazes me every day is, in fact, that companies still struggle with information management, with customer experience. And this seems to be pretty much an unsolved problem. And also because I'm an industry analyst, I look at this and I say the market is still in a pretty early stage. Now, what I would like to do today, I'd like to talk about information management strategy, but I'd like to start a little higher. I'd like to look at strategic planning in general, and I, in my career, had the opportunity to do a lot of strategic plans, starting with portfolio planning and business unit planning, corporate strategy for a multinational company. And today I apply this expertise as an industry analyst, and I do consult actually primarily with software companies how they should optimize their company strategy. Now, what I would like to do, I'd like to start with the key elements of a strategic plan, go through those, and then apply them both to a company strategy, which I hope will give you some interesting food for thought, and then make the connections to information management. And we'll see that there are quite a few connectors, actually, and quite a few interdependencies. So I'll start with the strong vision on top. The vision needs to guide any strategy. And you may say, well, but does it need to be visionary? We don't really have visionaries in our management. And I get this argument a lot, and I usually say, true, it's indeed a rare breed, but what you need to have is a very clear strategy, articulated, formulated, and then executed step by step. And of course, that shouldn't be done in a vacuum, right? So this is where the customer aspect comes in. It needs to be all customer focused. And of course, that's also tricky because it's not just the customer requirements today. You want to anticipate what these customer requirements are going to be in 3, 5, and 10 years out. Also looking on the right-hand side, the ecosystem trends, same situation. And ecosystem here includes things like the competition, like roads to market, like technologies available. Also anticipating where this is going. And now in the center, for a good reason, is the company, the core company strengths. Now, what you want to ask yourself is, what do we stand for? What do we want to be known for, actually, a couple of years out? Now, let me Let me take this one step further and actually into this customer experience. And we heard a lot about customer experience and total experience, so we can broaden this at this point as well. But the customer experience, of course, depends a lot on the customer interactions. So both inbound and outbound here, because if we look at the importance for a moment, a company that isn't successful in, or if you maybe stay with the onboarding example here for a second. So the onboarding of a new client may be the start of a long-lasting relationship, or it may be the abrupt end of that relationship, if the experience indeed during that onboarding process leads to a negative experience. Now, what I would like to do now, I'd like to double-click on all these triangles and then dive a little deeper into what does this mean from a company strategy perspective, and then make the connection to information management. Now, starting with this strong vision, starting with the fact that it needs to be a very clear direction, differentiated in the TAM, in the target addressable market, where this respective company, where you certainly as companies play. But that brings, now we said we need to look out a couple of years, so that very quickly brings in the aspect of digital transformation. And that, of course, takes us into the information management. Now, if we look at one data point here, and analysts like data, so I couldn't resist to bring you one data point. I'll try and point. So firstly, I did bring you, this is data from the European Investment Bank, a report that was published just a couple of weeks ago. So if you're interested, I do invite you to read about it, actually talking about the digital divide and the fact that this is a widening because of the pandemic. So the survey data, or the snapshot that I took here, looks at two things. It looks at the aspect of investing in digital transformation, in digitalization in general, and what companies did during the pandemic. So what you see here in terms of EU data, so shocking, 26% actually did neither. They didn't invest before, and they didn't invest during the pandemic. Now, there's a small element here. They do some basic digitalization, but that's usually just offering services on the website, for example. Now, the larger group here, 61%, they actually did invest in digital transformation prior to the pandemic. And then the majority of those, actually, they saw the value and they did more, they accelerated. So what that means, of course, is those who didn't invest in the first place, didn't catch up during the pandemic, they're left further behind. And the others who have seen the benefits of doing that, they are further ahead because they continue to invest and they continue to be successful. So the second aspect, the customer-focused aspect. Now, starting again with the company strategy, of course, the whole strategy and all the functions, when you do functional plans, need to be customer-focused. But we also said, well, but they're changing, so they need to be adjusted all the time, and it's about anticipating what will happen related to the customer expectations. And there are a number of different aspects, but I wanted to highlight actually one, and that is the increasing diversity in terms of customer inputs. The increasing volume, first of all. Secondly, the numbers of input sources, and also the number of input devices where customers send their inputs from. So we have talked a lot about omni-channel and multi-channel. And I'd actually like to go back to the example that you had just earlier, Annemarie, the claims processing example. Now, if you look at that letter that you had first, well, if not too long ago, people would actually print that letter and they would mail it in. Now, what happened, obviously, and a lot of people say during the pandemic, but I would submit a trend that obviously started much earlier, is the fact that people now send this letter as an attachment, as you had in your example. But they augment this through other inputs. They may fax a piece of information from the assessment, for example. They may follow up then with a voice message, so they may get prompted, right, and they may actually record the voice message as an additional piece of information. Now, what this brings to mind is actually another gap that exists, and it's the gap between the expectation of the end customer in a B2C environment in particular, and what companies offer. Now, when you think back to how would you like to communicate? You want to communicate with your bank, with your insurance company, exactly how you communicate in your private life, right? So you text, you send voice messages, you use social media, etc. But many companies are not ready to do that. They just offer certain channels. And if they do, the channels are not integrated. And that, of course, leads to frustration because there are delays. The case, if we stay with the case management example, may not be processed as quickly and as completely and correctly as we would like to see. Now, the ecosystem trends is the next aspect of the triangle, if you remember. What's important here is just think about how flexibility and scalability has become more and more important during the pandemic, or I would submit actually has received a different meaning, because we were all talking about flexibility and scalability before the pandemic, but it definitely changed its meaning there. I would also submit that even before the pandemic, the market became more volatile. Changes are happening more quickly. Things need to be adjusted more quickly. And what I would like you to think about is how that actually changes the requirements for software and solutions. I think it's important to consider that in the selection criteria for a software solution, and look at the architecture, look at aspects like, is it built on a modern architecture that uses containerized microservices? Also the business model. Does it offer a subscription? Does that allow you to align the cost in terms of cost associated with transactions better? Does that help you meet the requirements from the CFO that is going towards, well, it should be OPEX-based rather than a CAPEX investment? So just a couple of aspects to think about. And now the core company strengths, we said, well, that's what it needs to be rooted in. I'd like to take it one step further and say, in a strategic plan, what is very important to do is also to do a very thorough self-assessment to start with, do a thorough and an objective inventory of what you're doing well, what you're not doing so well, and what you actually have available that is future-proof, that you want to keep. Aspects, processes, and now I'm quickly getting into information management, that you want to keep, aspects or processes or process elements that you want to change, improve, and others that need to be built from scratch because they just don't align with where the market is going, where your customers are going, and where you want to be as a company. Now, do keep one thing in mind. If we agree that end-to-end automation is the ultimate end goal that you want to strive for, keep in mind that the entire process is only as good, efficient, automated as its weakest element. Now, what happens is you may have the capture process perfectly automated, and then you're running into a legacy system, and that doesn't connect with anything. And someone needs to be there and key data from one system to the other, and it still blows my mind when I hear people actually telling me that they do this. So I find this quite amazing. Keep in mind that it's only as good as really the entire process as you plan for this automation. Now, I'd like to wrap up with a couple of best practices for input management, and I'd like to start with allow your customers to communicate with you, to do these business transactions with you in the way they prefer, because that is essential for the customer experience, and it's essential then for the resulting loyalty. And do make sure that these different input channels are tightly integrated. We had interesting discussions yesterday in the management circle about that being still one of the very much unsolved problems, I would call it, because also keep in mind that people in one transaction, they may actually jump between communication channels. And if things are not tightly integrated, that leads to certainly frustration and delays. And so look for these capture solutions, and I define capture very loosely, by the way, or very broadly, to include all the automation of all information-intensive processes. So that may be important to add here. But look for software and solutions that allow you to do that. And finally, aim for the seamless end-to-end automation that starts certainly with the actual capture, with the ingestion of business information, but runs all the way through, ideally, really the extent of the entire process that may go across departments. Because what I found is that many people just think of one department or one process step, and that is obviously not a true end-to-end automation, and that will finally give you this customer experience that you were looking for, and it allows you to achieve the company growth both in revenue and in earnings. So that's what I wanted to share with you today. That's all I was given time to share, I should say. I'm happy to continue the conversation, so please do find me during the lunch break. I'm happy to discuss this.